Welcome back to Think Outside the Board. I'm your host, Brian Toohey, and today I'm doing a first impressions video on Maglev Metro. Now, Maglev Metro is a 1 to 4 player game. It's sort of a train game, but the interesting thing about it is it's not a cube rails game. There is pick up and deliver, but you're actually picking up and delivering passengers, which will allow you to upgrade your player board. So you're going to be using the same thing that you're delivering to create upgraded actions on your player board. Apart from that, I would characterize the game as network and route building, tile placement, and of course pick up and deliver. It's a medium heavy game for 1 to 4 players, which means yes, it has solo. The other cool thing about it is there are 2 boards. So there's a New York side with this big hub, and then there is another flip side, which is Berlin, and there's no kind of big centralized robot hub in the Berlin map. That map is sort of the more difficult map for more advanced gamers. But it's really neat that they have 2 different boards in Maglev Metro. Now, this game is published by Bezier Games, who are known for all the games that Ted Alspach designs, as well as Whistle Stop and Whistle Mountain. Now, Ted Alspach has designed Castles of Mad King Ludwig, One Night Ultimate Werewolf, One Night Ultimate Werewolf Daybreak, Suburbia, Ultimate Werewolf Ultimate Edition, and Werewords. So essentially Ted Alspach kind of has 2 careers going. He's got the Ultimate Werewolf thing, the social deduction game, and he's done really well with that. And there have been many big versions of that. And then he's also got Castles of Mad King Ludwig and Suburbia. And so Maglev Metro is really going to fall more into that realm of game. It is a medium-heavy game. There's kind of a lot going on for players to deal with. It's a Euro versus the kind of more deduction-y werewolf games. Now, there are 2 different artists on this game. You've got Alana Kelsey, who has worked on Castles of Mad King Ludwig Collector's Edition, which is in the process of production after a very successful Kickstarter. And she also worked on Suburbia and Whistle Mountain. And the other artist on this project is Allen Tim, who worked on the original Castles of Mad King Ludwig, as well as a game that I don't know called The Favor of the Pharaoh and Suburbia. So both of those artists have worked on multiple Bezier games and feel a little bit like in-house artists. So let me show you how Maglev Metro plays. This is a first impressions video, so I'm not going to do a full teach or a full review, but I am going to show you the mechanics of the game and how it plays, and then I will give you my feelings on it after having played a few games. I think I played a 2-player game and a couple solo games. So this is the Maglev Metro board, or one side of it actually. It is double-sided. This is the Manhattan side, and this side features this giant piece called the hub, which essentially is a factory, a warehouse, and a lab all in one. So this is a little bit of a weird game. It's called Maglev Metro Magnetic Levitation Rail. And you are going to be transporting both robots, which will be in this bag that you'll pull out. And they are 3 different colors. There's gold, silver, and bronze. As you can see, they're pretty close in color. They're okay for me. I'm able to see the difference. I'm not colorblind. But I do think it's one of the most egregious errors in terms of how close colors are and how confusing they can be, especially when you look at this player board and you see all these gold, silver, and bronze icons. It can get a little confusing. Anyway, you're going to have robots that you're going to be transporting, as well as passengers, and they come in 4 colors. They're pink, coral, lavender, and purple. And you're going to put these out all over the board, just kind of where these different buildings are. I'm just not going to put them all out on the board right now, but you will put 1 type of passenger on each matching station, and then you'll have the rest on the board. And as soon as someone builds one of these stations, all of those other passengers will go into the bag with the metallic robots, and then when you draw when you draw these out, you'll get the passengers and the robots together once they've been added, once a station has been built. So in this game, you are building tracks, building stations, and you're doing it all for points. There's no real end game goal thematically, except that you're trying to get the most points. The game will end when the bag runs out, or, for instance, in the Manhattan board, when at least 1 color of each station has been built. At the beginning of the game, There's a lot of variability here because there are 4 different decks of cards. So you've got this one, and you'll draw a random one, and you'll be able to score something related to the passengers or the robots. You know, this one says 4 points for every full set. So if you have one of each of these, you're gonna get 4 points. And all of these cards will score you up to 15 points. So once you hit 15 on any card, you're capped. But you'll get one of those cards. You'll get one of these cards. These are more related to the track, so it'll give you a goal for how you're building your track. You'll also get one of these cards that has to do with how the stations are built and linked together. So you'll get one of those cards, and you'll also get one of these cards, and this has to do with how you have filled out your player board. So let's talk about the player boards, because that is such a key part of the game. So here is the player board for the green player. You can tell because it's green. You will automatically be able to score one of those 4 bonus cards at the end of the game. But if you want to score additional cards, you need to fill out one of these rows for each additional card. So filling out this row will allow you to score a second card. This will allow you to score a third. This will allow you to score a fourth. Now, at the beginning of the game, at least on this Manhattan side of the board, players are going to start with one of each kind of robot. And they'll get to slot them into their player board immediately. So maybe you're going to put this here, increase your capacity, and maybe you'll put one down here. Maybe you'll start working on getting the lavender unlocked. So these are all the different actions that you can take in the game, okay? And you start with 1 in each thing. So you can do any action up to kind of 1 unit. So that means you can build 1 piece of track, or you can move from 1 station to another, or your train can carry 1 person. When I put this in here, my train can now carry 2 people. Here, I can pick up 1 person, but if I add that on, now I can pick up 2 people. However, even though I have a capacity of 2, and I can pick up 2 people at a time, right now I can only drop off 1 person. So maybe I want to build this up as well. This one will allow me how many robots or passengers, as they come into the game, I can refill a station. This will allow me to move people around on my board. This will allow me to construct a station, which I need to get that filled very early on if I want to build any of these stations. And this one will allow me to reverse the train, which is not that useful, but if you are on a train track that goes for a long period, you can't just turn the train around. You have to go all the way to the end before you can kind of come back, unless you have the reverse train unlocked. Now, at the beginning of the game, you're going to get 2 actions. Every turn, you can take 2 actions. If you place robots in these spaces or the correct colored passengers in these spaces, you will unlock up to a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th action. So you could be doing 5 actions per turn if you get all this stuff unlocked. This one, first of all, you have to have this build station unlocked to be able to build the station. But once you have that, so down here we've got this area where even once can build stations, once I've filled this in, if I want to be able to build any of these types of stations or to be able to pick up or drop off these colored passengers, I need to fill in these spaces and unlock this. So this is just a prerequisite. But then if I want to build a pink station, I also need to put robots in here and unlock this. You'll notice that as you get into the darker colors, opening up coral will require a pink, which means I will have had to unlock pink to get a pink to be able to unlock coral. And the same is true for purple with the lavender. Now, endgame scoring, you're going to score a certain amount of points for your train links, but for each row that you fill, you're going to score an additional point per link. Also, you're going to score a certain amount of points per color passenger, so 1 point for each pink. But if I fill out all 3 of these, I'm going to score an extra point for each pink, so I would score 2 points for each pink instead of just 1. The lavenders are also worth 1. You can upgrade them to 2. The corals start at 2 and can be upgraded to 3, and the purples also start at 2 and can be upgraded to 3 points. So these things will increase your endgame scoring. But let's talk more about the actions. So one thing I can do is build track. I'm just gonna put this down here on the board while I show you how the actions work. You're gonna start out with your train, which looks almost like a fingernail clipper, but it's still pretty cool. You're gonna start out with this here. Now the train has a capacity of 4 at its most, which is fine because that's the most that this is. Now if I wanna build track, let's say at the very beginning of the game I wanna build track, and I can only build 1, I can really build track anywhere. I don't even have to be there, I just need to be linked to it. So if I'm starting from the central hub, maybe I'm gonna take one of these pieces, and as one of my starting actions, maybe I'm just gonna build this track right there, from here to here. Now, if I had, let's say I had this build station unlocked at the beginning of the game. For my second action, I could decide to build one of these buildings, these robot buildings. So let's say I built the lab. Now I haven't completely set up the game, but when you do set it up, you can see that there are robots, a certain number of robots in each station. So at the beginning of the game, you would fill a certain number of random robots here, like this. This lab would also come with one copper robot on it. So if I want to build a lab, the lab is going to come, as all stations do, with one robot or passenger that is similar on it. And when I build that station, I immediately just get to take him and plug him in. So maybe I'm going to put him here and start working to unlock my pink passengers. But then I'll build this station right here. And if you have a robot that actually matches this, he'll just go back in the bag. But the gold robot will remain there. So maybe later on another turn, I could move from one station to another. Another action would be I could pick him up. And then I could drive to another station, which normally the gold wants to get delivered to the warehouse. But the hub can be used to deliver any of the 3 robot colors, which is sort of unique to the New York map. So I could drive over here on another turn, and then that would be one action, the move, and then the second action could be to drop him off. Now when you drop off these little guys, they're also going to go on your player board, and you're going to increase another action. Now, all of these have the 2 spot with this kind of rainbow robot color, meaning you can put a gold, a bronze, or a silver in the number 2 spot. But then as you get into the 3rd and 4th spots on the upgrade, they become more specific. So for instance, track will take only silver robots for the 3rd and 4th spot. Moving will take only gold robots for the 3rd and 4th spot. But something like capacity, you can use any robot color for any of these spots. So the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th can be any color. The pickup action, all bronze. The drop off, all silver. Again, after you get out of the second one. The refill station, gold, and the adjust are bronze. So as you're picking up passengers and moving them around the board and dropping them off, you're going to be upgrading this board, and it's going to let you do bigger things, more pickups, more drop-offs at once, moving between more stations at once, building more track at once. It is a very nice upgradable train engine. It is an engine building game, essentially. What's also cool is you're going to have players with different track, and everyone is building their own tracks. But the way that these colors and these tiles are designed, they're not in the same place on the same tile for any of the different colors. So an orange player could build a track right here, and they would just put their train track on top, and then you've got, 2 different tracks of 2 different player colors in the same space. And one of the really aesthetically cool things about this game is that if you're playing with 3 or 4 players, and every player has a different color, train, and track, as they build up this map and they layer these tiles on top of each other, you're going to have a map that really does look like a train or subway map with all of these colors winding everywhere. Now, there is a rule that you can only build 2 train tracks in or out of any station, not including the hub, which means you need to be aware of that as a player. If you go into the lab, you can come out of the lab, but once you have 2 tracks, that's it. You can't build a 3rd track out of the lab. Now, at the end of the game, after you have upgraded your player board and dropped off and picked up a lot of passengers and built all these stations and built your tracks, the end game will be triggered either when at least one of each of these 4 colored buildings has been built in a train station, an office, a store, an embassy, a studio, or when you run out of people in the bag. So that will end the game, and then when you're doing end game scoring, you're going to fill out this pad. So you're going to score points for every pink, lavender, coral, and purple player on your board, depending on how much you have upgraded that section. You're going to score for a point for all of your train links. So each train link will score you a point. And that can be upgraded by these. So if you have all 3 rows filled out here, you're going to score 4 points for each link instead of 1. But that would go here. And then you've got your 4 bonus cards that you can score. You're going to score 1 by default, but remember, if you want to score the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, you need to unlock these on your player board. And then you'll add up the points, and the player with the most points wins. Now, this is the scoring card for the solo game. It looks a little different because every turn you're going to take someone out of this bag, and you're going to put it off to the side. It's just sort of like an expense for playing the solo game. And then at the end, you're going to have a certain number of people out of the bag, and so you're going to deduct a point for each person. In my solo game, I had 35 people out of the bag, and I ended up scoring 80 points after that. So it was 120 minus 35, got me 87, and that's kind of like a middling score. It's a pretty decent score. It's kind of in the middle range. But I liked the solo game. I thought it was pretty cool. And then lastly, I thought I would just show you the Berlin side if you wanted to see it. So this board does come apart in 4 pieces, kind of like a puzzle. There we go. So that is the Berlin side. So the setup's going to be a little different. You're still going to have 1 each of your factory, warehouse, and lab. You'll have 2 each of the other buildings. But things are in different places where you're going to build stations, and you don't have this big hub tile where you can dump off a lot of robots all at once. Everything is kind of separate in this one. You can also see from the icons in the train stations for the setup robots, there's a lot fewer robots that go into the setup in Berlin. There are even some locations here that don't have anything. But at most, it looks like they have 2 robots and sometimes 1. Whereas on the Manhattan side, let's go back to that again. You can see the setup here has between 2 and 4 robots per station, whereas Berlin has between 1 and 2. But it's pretty cool that they have 2 boards. It gives you a lot of variability. And, you know, in the future, maybe they'll put out more expansion boards with different cities. It seems like that would be a pretty good idea that could be implemented pretty easily. And then, of course, all of these different scoring cards of 4 different kinds will give lots of variability to every game that you play. I really like Maglev Metro a lot, actually. It's I just did a video for Merchant's Cove, and I don't think that Maglev Metro is as enticing to look at. Like, it doesn't look like it's going to be as fun a game. It's got more of a muted color palette, and the theme that this is kind of a computer-driven rail system. It's not quite as enticing, I think, as Merchant's Cove. However, it's a better game, in my opinion. I think I knocked it down a little bit on my scoring just because, for a couple of reasons, really. I think it is going to get a little samey over time. And the tiles don't completely slot to the board flush. There is, when you're playing and you're playing with a lot of players and you're building all the routes with those clear plastic tiles and you're kind of slotting them in, they don't always fit completely flush. And I think some of that has to do with those double layered station tiles. They're really thick. They can get kind of stuck in the board. And the 2 tiles that make up those station tiles aren't always sitting completely flush. So that can create a little bit of a component issue with some of the tiles not sitting totally flat as they would in an ideal world. However, it's not game breaking. It's not a huge deal. It's just, there are a couple little things I think that stop this game from being as perfect as it could be. But the fact that you've got 2 different boards and there's a lot of kind of variability in the game, and you're always upgrading your player board, and there are a lot of different ways that you can do that. There's a huge amount of variability in this game. Also, the fact that you've got 4 different scoring cards, that you're going to be scoring anywhere from 1 to 4 of them, depending on how you slot those passengers to score extra cards at the end of the game. I think with both Suburbia and Castles of Mad King Ludwig, Ted Alspach has created these games that just offer you enormous scoring opportunities and kind of a wide breadth of how you approach that scoring. And I think Maglev Metro is another game in that kind of line with Mad King Ludwig and Suburbia that just gives you a lot of ways to do things. Now, there are some things on the player board that aren't as necessary. Like, I think everyone's going to try to be upgrading the amount of passengers that they can carry and pick up and drop off, the amount of tracks that they can make in one turn, the amount of stations that they can move, and players are also going to want to unlock those abilities to build new stations and the scoring capabilities and the bonus points for links, all those things on the player board. But there are some things on the player board that I think are just not as important, like your ability to reverse a train. Like, yeah, it's nice when you're driving in the middle of a train track to be able to turn around and go the other way, but there are ways to finagle around that, I think, mechanically. So that's not really something that you absolutely need to be unlocking unless you have a need for it in that game. There's another unlockable where it lets you move more and more people around your board if you don't like how you've already slotted them. Again, that's a little bit of like an oh shit button that helps you fix a mistake, but I think if you're playing smart, you don't really need to make use of that. So there are some things on the player board that I think are more powerful and more valuable than other things, and there are definitely certain things you're going to want to be building up early in the game to kind of power up your train engine. But I think the choices that are available in this game and the player agency and the things that you can do make this a game that, for me, I see a lot more replayability down the line. Like, I think this is a game where you can play the base game or you can go to the other side of the board, either way, but you're going to be able to get a lot of plays in one iteration of the game without it really getting old. Something like Merchant's Cove, which I just reviewed, has a lot of variability, but that kind of comes with you playing different vendors and doing different things. Maglev Metro doesn't have all of that glut, but what it does have baked into its smaller footprint is a lot of choices and a lot of variability within that design. And for me, that actually makes Maglev Metro, I think, a better game than Merchant's Cove, and a game that I could play much more frequently without getting sort of as tired of it. And so for now, I'm scoring Maglev Metro an 8.5. I really like it. I'm really excited to see it play at higher player counts, especially with people who play train games but haven't played a train game where your pick up and deliver goods are going to upgrade your player board. I think there are some really neat things going on in Maglev Metro between being a normal train game and then having all of this customizable, upgradable player board. There's just a lot of room to do cool stuff and different stuff every game. So I think that's all I really need to say about Maglev Metro at this point. I mean, it's a good game. It's a really solid game. It's one of the better games that I played this year. In fact, I will go so far as to state that right now, Maglev Metro is my 5th favorite game of 2021. So the top one is Sleeping Gods, followed by Dice Throne Adventures, followed by Excavation Earth, which I think a lot of people have really overlooked. It's a great game. Followed by Dice Throne Season 1 Rerolled. So you may or may not count that, depending on who you are. It is a second edition. And then Maglev Metro. And then I think under Maglev Metro is maybe Venice and then Merchant's Cove. And I have a few more problems with the Venice because the game is so fiddly and it has some issues. But I think if you are not considering campaign games like Sleeping Gods or Dice Throne Adventures, if you're looking more for Euros, the 3 best Euros, in my opinion, so far of this year are Excavation Earth, then Maglev Metro, and then Venice. So any 3 of those games are really, really good, solid games. Excavation Earth is probably my favorite, but Maglev Metro is number 2 to that one. If it's your first time here, please consider liking and subscribing. If it's not your first time, welcome back. Happy to have you here again. Anyway, I hope everybody's having a great week and getting their gaming done whatever way they can these days. This video took me a little bit longer than anticipated to get produced and get posted, just because I've had a lot of things going up, to the point where I've already filmed and produced my next video for Merchant's Cove. So if you're looking for more content, just know that Merchant's Cove video will also be posted within a day or two, and then the next video coming after that will likely be for Cloud Age, and that will probably get posted before the weekend. So I hope to see you in either of those videos, and have a great weekend. Memorial Day weekend is coming up. Hopefully you get some more gaming in, and I will see you soon in one of my next videos, whichever one you decide to watch. So take care, and I will see you soon.